Welcome to The Burn, Beyond Firestop. I'm your host, John Zalepka. Our show is focused on life safety and code compliance in the built environment, which puts me on a mission to find the most interesting people in this space and get their unique perspectives. Our hope is that our listening audience walks away with an understanding of how our guests and their businesses also contribute to the promotion of life safety of whatever is being built. Our show is brought to you by Specified Technologies, also known as STI Firestop. Since 1990, STI has been a leading global provider of innovative fire protective solutions that help stop the spread of fire, smoke, and hot gases. Our guest today is well versed in these such topics. He's a fire protection specialist and a field engineer at UL, or Underwriters Laboratories, where much of the industry's Firestop testing is done. Mark St. Onge, welcome to The Burn.
Thanks. Good to be here.
So I always like to start on a personal note, which I guess we just did instead of just jumping into the whole business of things. And, which is good because I couldn't find much personal information on you on LinkedIn, which kudos to you. You're smarter than the rest of us. So I guess I'm going to dig a little bit here. I see that you received your electrical and mechanical degree from the Community College of Air Force. And this might be a stupid question, but does that mean you were in the Air Force?
Yes, it does. I served 15 years in the Air Force. Did electrical power production for them, so generators, aircraft arresting systems, a whole bunch of things. The career field's kind of diverse. Anything with an engine that's not a vehicle, more or less. So a lot of pieces of that. Worked in a civil engineer squadron, stationed at a number of places throughout the world, from California, Korea, Italy, Germany, DC.
Wow.
And did,
well, thank you for your service. Awesome. So did you ever fly planes or jets, or did you just kind of work on them?
No, not everybody in the Air Force is a pilot. So I did not fly any planes. I didn't work on the aircraft. The closest I did to working with the aircraft was the aircraft arresting system. So kind of like you see on the movie Top Gun, where you got that cable that goes across the aircraft carrier and the tail hook that comes down and catch it. We have those in the Air Force for our fixed runways for our fighter planes and emergencies to catch. So I did run those pretty extensively in the Air Force.
Wow.
And that was
awesome. Well, thanks again for your service. And I know that you mentioned the other day that you were a third-party inspector before going to work at UL. I guess, how did you transition from the Air Force into inspecting Firestop systems, if you will?
Well, so I got out of the Air Force, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to, do when I grew up. And I was in my 30s there, so I started off by, trying to use my GI Bill, go to school, and I was working in a volunteer fire department, doing structural and wildland firefighting and being EMT, and doing a lot of stuff with fire there. And I had done a lot of work with the fire department in the military. I kind of do a lot of different tasks. You don't just do your primary job there, and had worked on some of those certs while I was still in with a fire department outside the base at Andrews Air Force Base there. So had already gotten into that. So I started doing a lot of that stuff, and started doing working for a company, doing special inspections of buildings as a third-party person. And I had a lot of fire background and started getting into the SFRM and the intumescent paints and then the Firestop piece and doing a lot of work with that and training. And as it kind of grew as an industry, I kind of was the lead person in the company to help build that program up for them, and was doing a ton of stuff with that. And going to a lot of conferences, and I ended up running into Rich Walke, who everybody kind of knows in the industry, and talked to him at one of the ICC conventions there in Colorado, where I was living at the time, and talked with him and some great folks like John Roberts, who's a fire protection engineer with UL, and Ruben Sandoval, and they kind of said, hey, we think we should have a conversation, and it kind of just went from there, and they said, we'd like you to come, and we're starting a special inspection piece under UL, and we'd like you to be a big part of it. So I was lucky enough to get brought in at that point and have the opportunity.
That's awesome. So, I mean, obviously before growing that program, you spent a few years out in the field inspecting Firestop systems, so I'm assuming you saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm sure you have some pretty interesting pictures on your phone.
I've got my folders of both the folder
I'd love
shame
to see it
and
someday.
the folder of glory of things. We try to be careful with those. You don't want to. You got some clients that don't like to advertise when they have some mistakes. But it's a learning piece, and I learn every time I go in the field. Still, you go out there and you look at something, and you may be something that you think is going to be simplistic, but every time you go in the field, you got to have that mindset that, you're not that arrogant jerk that's going to walk up and know what's happening before you look at the stuff on site. So, we would go out there and do the special inspections and go out and, hey, let me see your plans and what are you doing here and what do you got going and
Sure.
what's your plan to accomplish this? And the great part about as you grow in the career field and you get more and more experience, you're able to kind of look at things and say, hey, this is where you're at, or this is what your plans say, this is what your specs say, and this is what you're expecting. But just heads up, did you notice this over here? And this may become an issue for you that you may want to take a look at, kind of thing. And you got to not cross that line as an inspector, and you can't direct them and everything else, but you can kind of point things out and say, hey, you really should probably take a look at this. And as you start seeing more and more, and sitting down in those pre-construction meetings and saying, hey, just FYI, folks, there's historically what we see, and I see you're building, a stick frame building, or you're building something with structural steel and concrete, and here's different issues that we see throughout. And sometimes then you can carefully pull
Mhm.
out some pictures that you've got stored somewhere and say, hey, these kinds of things happen, and just be aware, and let's talk about this. So yeah, I've gotten to see quite a few things over the past several years, and hopefully I get to bring that to our team here of inspectors,
Well,
and help
great
them
answer.
with
I
that.
mean, you actually just answered my next question too, which is I was going to ask you to kind of discuss the importance of having a pre-construction meeting and establishing some type of barrier management program, especially when it comes to fire stopping. But you probably hit everything we were talking about right there. So, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say having a pre-construction meeting, when you start before you start even building the walls, having that meeting before you start pouring that concrete is likely going to be one of the most important pieces of your construction phase, because you know you may think, hey, I'm going to pour my slabs and then I'm going to core through them, and then you look at the hourly rating and you go, that's an option, and there's some systems out there for that. Have you looked at cast-in devices, though? It may be something that's a lot simpler for you long term and going to save you a lot of, for the fire resistance piece, and it's your decision, but here's an option for you. When you start talking about how they're going to build different assemblies, how things are going to interact, what your ratings are going to be, what types of products you're going to use, and you're able to catch stuff ahead of time or identify, here's the common issues, because the plans may say fire stop here, right? But that's not a system. And they think, well, yeah, I'm just going to use some red stuff and put it in the hole, right? I'm just going to throw some mineral wool in there, Mark. I'm going to throw some backing material and some red stuff. And you're going, well, hey guys, look, that's not how this works. Are you sole sourcing your fire stop material? Because I'm not going to tell you need to use one brand or another, but at the same time, I think you should probably consider sole sourcing for the annual maintenance piece, right? Because when it comes in a year or 2 years down the line, when something gets disturbed, if you're not sole sourcing and you don't know what material is there, now you got to rip it all out and redo it versus repairing something. So there's a benefit there. Who's installing your fire stop? Is it your trades? Is it a qualified contractor? And UL has a qualified contractor program. But you got to know what you're doing, and you got to have a plan. You got to think ahead. And if you're not, then you're playing catch up and you're being reactive instead of proactive. So being proactive and having that pre-construction meeting is going to be helpful. It's going to save you time and money, if
I
it's
mean, you're
done right.
clearly passionate about this, and I guess at what point were you like, all right, I got to make a bigger difference? I'm going to work for UL, and I guess what types of things are you involved in there? Testing, I'm assuming, and some of the qualified contractor programs. Just I guess talk to me about some of the things that you're doing there.
So yeah, I sit right below. I report to a guy named Ruben Sandoval, who's the program manager for both the fire protection or fire barrier management program at UL, which is a field-based program, and the lightning protection system program. He manages both, and I'm his lead guy, more or less, underneath the fire barrier management side. So we have several service offerings. We do act as a qualified third-party special inspector. We have a large number of qualified inspectors, not just nationally in the United States, but we've got them overseas. We've got them in the Middle East. We've got them in Europe. We've got them in Mexico, Canada, all over the world. We've got qualified inspectors. So I help train those folks, and get them squared away. I'll do a lot of the presentations and education for AHJ across the country, across the world, doing some outreach there. doing some speaking events, kind of things at ICC or FCIA or any of the other industry orgs that ask for somebody to come and do some presentation. Because a lot of the building officials, they're smart folks, but as Firestop's evolved, it's not something that the standard building inspector looks at anymore. It's a special inspection piece, and they need to understand why and what's going on and the different effects and how one thing affects another. So I do that. I get to help out our qualified contractor program folks that are doing those audits of those qualified companies that, there's specialty contractors that come and say, hey, I want to take a test. I want to get audited. I want to get accreditations to show that I know my stuff and get hired on to do that stuff. So they'll call sometimes with technical questions, or they'll try to come on and they'll be going through an audit and there'll be a question about what they're doing on something. So internally and externally, folks will reach out to me about that stuff. We started doing NFPA 80 annual fire door inspections. We offer that now underneath our program under the fire barrier management piece. We offer MAC certificates, which is a master audit certificate of compliance. What that is if a qualified contractor installs your Firestop or is a qualified contractor under UL and they go and install a Firestop at a building, they can offer the certificate to the building owner saying, hey, UL didn't do the special inspection. Maybe it wasn't required special inspection because of the type of the building, but we had UL come out anyways and evaluate our work. Doesn't encompass the entire scope of a special inspection. We're out there for about a day, walking the project, making sure everything's being done right. For the most part, and they offered us a cert, and they can offer that to the building owner to say, hey, look, this is additional assurance that we did things right. So we've got that piece. And I also interact a lot with our engineering staff and our regulatory folks. So I sit with them in about once a month and have a meeting, and we go over different things that are going on to kind of see things from everybody's aspect. What's engineering doing? What's our industry manager doing? Our PDE? What are we seeing in the field, and how are one thing affecting another? What are the issues, so we can talk about those and try to help the industry grow in the right direction. So it's a really unique role, and it's awesome because I get to interact with some amazing people at UL and really get to hear other pieces and get a really greater understanding of the industry and how things work. And I'm just kind of in awe a lot of times that I get to sit in there with those folks.
Yeah, you just blew my mind. You're a busy guy over there. Couple of things that you just said that jump out at me. First, the UL Qualified Contractor Program. I know we see that alongside the FM 4991 in the specifications a lot of time. Mm-hmm. How are those two programs the same or different, or because you usually see one and then the other one as well?
Yeah, you do for the most part. And the programs have some similarities and overlaps. Both programs are designed to have a contractor come to a NERDL and get, test their knowledge. So you take a test for us, and then you develop a quality management system, and that's you get audited by us initially, and then once every year thereafter. And you've got to maintain that program, and you got to show proof that you're not just making this binder of our policies and our procedures and then putting it on a shelf and having it collect dust. We go out to those job sites and we audit there, and we make sure that that's being enacted. So both programs are similar in that aspect. Both of them have a lot of ties to the FCIA, the Firestop Contractors International Association. And it's just to kind of elevate that industry because, you and I both know, and you used to work in the field quite a bit, you'd go out to these job sites and you'd see folks installing Firestop, and what they were doing. Sometimes, you got that folder of shame pictures, right? And you're going, where were you at mentally with this when you started doing this, right? And these folks have kind of said, hey, look, I am going to show you that I'm going to demonstrate by my knowledge and everything else that I know my stuff. So we go out and audit them and develop those companies to be the best in the business. Because you don't let just anybody install, wire up a building, right? You got to be an electrician. You got to be a licensed electrician for that. Not just anybody installs a sprinkler. Well, why is Firestop any different? In essence, it is a fire protection system, right? It's a passive system, but it's still there for a reason. We've got, active systems, we got passive systems, and we got, alarms and detection systems out there. And that triad, that fire protection triad, acts together. And if it's like a three-legged stool, if you lose one of those legs, things come crashing down. So we like to try to push that up to say, hey, look, you should use a qualified contractor. You're going to have a better success rate with your inspections probably, because you've got knowledgeable people putting it in. You don't have to have re-inspections. You don't have failures. It's done right. You're not having people that don't understand what's going on out there in the field doing things and then failing and then not knowing what they did wrong. So we do push that
Yeah,
spectrum.
I love that you guys are raising the standard and pushing that awareness of the qualified contractor and what it means to be that. The other thing that you said that jumped out at me is the third party inspection. I know that some people have some concerns about UL getting into the third party testing, but I mean maybe I'm wrong here. But who better to inspect the Firestop system than the third party testing agency that tested it themselves, right? I mean, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, can you speak to that for a second?
Yeah, I think it's, some people are, I don't know if they've got some heartache or not, but in reality, if a standard person goes out and gets trained and gets qualified to be an inspector, right? There's a lot of training that goes into that, studying stuff and taking a test. And there's supposed to be some experience that goes along with that to comply with ASTM E3038 for qualification of that third party inspector, a number of years depending on your qualification piece. But once you're ultimately qualified, you go in the field and you're on your own, right? And hopefully there's somebody else in your company that you can reach back to, somebody else who's qualified and experienced or knowledgeable that you can ask those questions to, but maybe not. And the great part about us is if one of my inspectors in the field has a question, they call my phone. I answer my cell phone. It rings nonstop day and night. That's no big deal. We answer the questions and we keep them moving. If a contractor has an issue, they've got somebody that can reach back to those inspectors or to me. If I've got a question, I can reach back to, we've got a whole staff of regulatory experts like, Bruce Johnson and John Roberts and folks like that are former AHJs, former fire marshals and building officials that can give us some insight. I can reach back to, our PDE, Kevin Highland, or to Matt Schumann, our industry manager, or to the folks that are in the lab testing the systems to say, hey guys, this is what we're seeing in the field. What's your thoughts? I think this is compliant because of this, or I think this is non-compliant because of this, but I'm trying to gain a better understanding of this. And, maybe we need to be aware of that in the lab or for the standard and update the STP, the standards technical panel for some stuff. And it really facilitates that conversation and helps get the right answer in the field versus someone who's not with UL who they may or may not have that technical expert to reach back to. And I'm willing to just say it, we've probably got the best technical experts in the field for this stuff. Bar none.
I was going to say, it sounds like an all-star team right there.
Yeah.
I guess my one question about those 2 points, the qualified contractors and the special inspection, why do you think more AHJs don't enforce them when they're in the specification? I mean, and one's clearly required by code, and yet sometimes they don't even, it's not even there.
I think it's an education piece, to be honest with you. And Firestop, it's kind of in its infancy. Firestop special inspection that came around in the 2012 building code. And it's kind of evolving from there. People are still adopting that stuff and understanding why they should or shouldn't be doing that. Some folks still think, well, I can go in there and make sure it's good. But, once you get that training for them and we do some presentations for them and show them, hey, look, this is what the code says. This is what the spec says. And this is what you're expecting to be delivered in the field. But here's what you're actually getting. And here's, in some cases, what we've done is some mock-up walls, and we've said, hey, look, these 4 installs on this one panel, what's the difference in them? And ask them to evaluate them and show them some that were done right but look wrong, and then they would fail them. And we're going, well, actually, that's right, and you just failed something that's compliant, or vice versa. We've done some trainings where we've actually built mock-up walls and said, hey, here you go, here's the Firestop material. Go ahead, here's your system. Go ahead and install this for us. And AHJs kind of look at you weird, like, what am I doing here? And they start, grabbing the caulk gun and they're trying to do it and they're having difficulty. And we're like, right. So if you, as an educated individual with experience in the built environment, is having trouble doing this, how can you expect someone who's not a qualified contractor to do it right? And you start seeing the gears turning and you see people going, maybe there's something to this. So jurisdictions are starting to take notice of those and see the benefit there. But it's difficult because they have their building inspectors that are, essentially, the gods, right? A city's building inspector shows up and they say, hey, it's wrong. There's no argument. They're like, okay, well, I got to fix it. When a third party inspector shows up and says, hey, this is wrong, sometimes that conversation goes a little bit differently. And they're like, no, and to fix that headbutting, having that qualified person that can say, hey, no, look, that's not right. And it's because you built the assembly wrong and you told me I had to fire stop it. And, I couldn't do it. So I hope it goes the right direction, and I think we're seeing it moving the right way. But I think there's a lot of education, so I think that's gonna
Yep.
be the big changing point
Yeah,
there.
keep doing what you're doing, man, and keep educating the people, stay informed, keep learning, inspectors out there. So, Mark, what's new at UL? I mean, I understand there's been some big news that's being announced recently, or is being announced right now, or as we speak, regarding
Yeah,
UL's Firestop numbering system. Can you finally tell us a little bit about it? And I say big news because I'm a Firestop geek, so in my world, it's big news.
well, well, yeah. So we announcing it. We're September 14th is supposed to be the rollout date here for this, and this should be airing after that. So the the thing here is Firestop's evolved, right? It's gotten so much work in it that we started running out of numbers, and we had to figure out for some pieces, right? And there's some types of systems that we'll probably never run out of system numbers for. There's not used as much, but when you start looking at your CAJ 1000 series, right? Concrete or masonry, wall or floor assembly, and your 1000 series being metallic penetrants, we're starting to run out of those system numbers. And some of your head of wall joints for those 0 to 2 inch dynamic joints, we're starting to run out of system numbers for. So we had to increase the capacity of numbers. So to do that, we looked at, do we upend the entire industry? Do we redo the whole numbering thing that we've got people starting to understand and just turn things on end, or is there a better way to do it? So we consulted internally with a number of people, and we reached out to a few folks externally and said, hey, what are your thoughts? Here's our options. And what we ended up essentially doing is we're adding a number to that end. So we're going to keep the same initial piece where it's CAJ for a concrete and masonry wall assembly, right, or a WL 1000 series, and use a WL 1000 frame gypsum wall with a metallic penetrant as an example. You'll still keep the WL, and you'll still keep that one, and then we'll add a one after that first one, right? So a WL 1000 series is going to go to a WL 11,000 series. But we're not going to change the existing ones. Anything that's already there in the system that's already been listed, or if we haven't run out of numbers in that particular category, we'll continue to list them until they run out. But then once we hit WL 1999, the next system will be WL 11,000, WL 1001, and keep progressing from there. So we'll just continuously have more numbers to use, and it gives us more capacity. And that just goes to show that the industry is growing, and there's a lot of things going on there, and there's a lot of growth. So it's a good thing, right?
It is. I was afraid you were going to start changing the numbers on me, but and the number, that's not bad. That's not too bad. I think we can we'll be able to swallow that one. So will there be a place, there'll be a link somewhere on your website, I'm sure, once you announce that. Again, this is September 14th as of this recording, so it will be after that. So we can put that in the show notes if you have something like that, Mark.
Yeah. What we can do is I've got some cheat sheets. I got some of them in front of me. I went through and developed some cheat sheets for everybody to show all the new updates to the numbering systems. Awesome. It's great for if folks are out there doing installs, if folks are trying to figure out what system numbers they're going to need. Even if you're doing a special inspection or something like that, to quick reference thing, and it's going to give you the breakout of all the numbering things. So I've got all those in PDF. You can reach out and go to fire.inspection@ul.com and request those, and we'll also put them up to our website as PDFs that you can open them up and download them and everything else. So everyone will have those available to use and reference. And if anybody ever needs anything, obviously, reach out fire.inspection@ul.com, and we can certainly help.
Awesome. Mark, before I let you go, is there any other news, any other industry news, or anything you want to tell us about? Promote anything? Do you have any live speaking engagements, I guess?
Well, we just did the UL Building Innovation Summit about a week or so ago. So those are available on demand, and there's about a bunch of webinars on there on our website on ul.com for education on fire resistance, whether it be Firestop or fire doors or fire resistance on that. I'd say look out. We should be updating some guide info cards on the Product IQ here coming up in the next few weeks. We've got several updates to those coming out. There'll be some more programs rolling out before the end of the year. We've got a lot of moving parts. We're trying to be responsive to the industry and really try to see that it's growing and grow with it.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thanks again. It was great getting to know you a little bit better.
Thanks.
All right. And a special thank you to our listening audience. We know there's a lot of podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to ours, so we greatly appreciate that. And again, make sure to check out the show notes for links to some of the things that we talked about. And finally, if you enjoyed the episode and you'd like to help support the show, please share it with others. Post it on social media, leave a rating, a review, whatever it is that you do with podcasts. And to catch all the latest and greatest on STI, check out our website at STI Firestop.com. And until next time, this is The Burn.